You went to your doctor. 2 words were written on a notepad: high blood pressure. A prescription followed, a quick handshake, and the appointment was over. You walked out with a pill, but no real explanation. No one told you what that pill actually does inside your body. No one explained what caused the problem in the first place. Just take this once a day and come back in a few months. And here's what most people don't realize until much later. This medication doesn't fix anything. It manages something. And there's a very important difference between those two ideas. The people who understand that difference get much better long-term results than the people who don't. Because once you understand what's really happening inside your body, you stop guessing and you start making decisions that actually work. Most people think high blood pressure is a heart problem. You see a high number and assume your heart is under stress, and that's partly true. But the real story doesn't start in your heart. It starts in your blood vessels. Your arteries are not rigid pipes. They are living tissue surrounded by smooth muscle that contracts and relaxes. With every heartbeat, when you're younger, those muscles are flexible. They expand, absorb pressure, and release it naturally. But over time, something changes. Those muscles begin to stay slightly contracted. They don't fully relax. It's like a fist that never completely opens. The space inside your arteries becomes narrower, and the same amount of blood now has to push through a tighter space. That's where pressure begins to rise. Now here's the critical part that most people never hear. This tightening is controlled at a microscopic level. For those muscles around your arteries to contract, calcium has to enter the muscle cells. This is not a theory, it's actual chemistry happening inside your body thousands of times every second. The cells have tiny channels that act like doors. When these doors open, calcium flows in, binds to proteins, and triggers contraction. The muscle tightens, the artery narrows, and your blood pressure goes up. This process is constant, and understanding it changes everything because now you know where the problem is really happening. This is exactly where the medication comes in. Its job is simple. It blocks those calcium channels. Think of it as placing something in front of the door so calcium can't enter. Without calcium entering the cells, the muscle can't contract as strongly. The arteries relax, widen, and allow blood to flow more easily. As a result, your blood pressure drops. This is why the medication works so effectively in the short term. The numbers improve quickly, and everything seems under control. But here's the part no one explains clearly. The medication blocks the signal, but it does not remove the reason that signal exists. The factors that cause the tension in your blood vessels in the first place are still there. High sodium intake, low physical activity, chronic stress, poor diet, all of these continue to push your system in the same direction. The medication is holding things steady on the surface, but underneath, the same forces are still active. Over time, this gap between managing the number and fixing the cause becomes more noticeable. And that's when people start to feel like something isn't adding up. Now let's look at what typically happens in real life. Someone in their late 50s gets diagnosed with high blood pressure. The numbers are high, the lifestyle is average, some extra weight, a stressful routine, and a diet built around convenience. The medication starts, and within a couple of weeks, the numbers come down. Naturally. It feels like the problem has been solved. Life goes back to normal. The same meals, the same stress, the same habits, just one difference, a pill every morning. For a while, everything looks fine. Then slowly, over months, the numbers begin to rise again. A follow-up appointment happens, and now the conversation shifts toward increasing the dose. This is where confusion begins. I've been taking the medication every day. Why is this happening? The answer isn't failure. It's incomplete understanding. The medication is still doing its job. The calcium channels are still being blocked, and the arteries are still being kept more open than they would be otherwise. But the forces pushing those arteries to tighten have not changed. In fact, they may have increased. High sodium intake continues to drive fluid retention. Poor dietary patterns contribute to inflammation. Chronic stress keeps the vascular system under tension. Over time, the pressure building underneath increases, and the medication has to compensate for more than it did at the beginning. This is why the dose often needs to be adjusted, not because the medication stopped working, but because the environment around it stayed the same. Now let's address something that concerns a lot of people: ankle swelling. When this happens, it often causes immediate worry. People assume something is wrong with their kidneys or their heart, but the mechanism is different. When your arteries relax, more blood flows into the smaller vessels in your legs and feet. Some of that fluid moves into the surrounding tissue, which creates visible swelling. This is not a sign of organ failure. It's a local effect of improved blood flow combined with pressure changes in the vessels. Simple adjustments can help. Elevating your legs in the evening allows that fluid to move back into circulation. Light movement during the day improves overall flow, and in many cases, your body adapts over time, reducing the effect naturally. Some people also notice warmth in the face, flushing, or a feeling that their skin is slightly hotter than usual. Again, this is related to improved circulation. Blood is reaching areas more easily than before, and your body is adjusting to a new baseline. This can feel unusual at first, but for most people, it fades as the body adapts. Another important point: this type of medication does not produce the persistent dry cough that some other blood pressure drugs are known for. That's because the mechanism is completely different. This is one reason many people are switched to this type of treatment when other options become difficult to tolerate. There's one small detail that can have a surprisingly large impact: grapefruit. Inside your body, there is an enzyme responsible for breaking down this medication and keeping its levels within a safe range. Compounds in grapefruit can interfere with that enzyme, slowing it down. When that happens, more of the medication remains in your system than intended. This can increase its effects beyond the prescribed dose. An occasional serving is unlikely to cause a serious issue, but regular consumption can create a pattern that alters how your body handles the medication. It's a simple adjustment, but one that can make a real difference in maintaining stability. This is where everything starts to change. There is a category of lifestyle interventions completely natural, nothing prescribed, that research has repeatedly shown can lower systolic blood pressure by 8 to 14 points when followed consistently. Now put that into perspective. A starting dose of this medication typically lowers blood pressure by around 10 to 15 points. That means the right lifestyle approach operates in the same range. Not identical, but close enough to matter in a very real way. And when you combine the two, the effect stacks. The medication blocks the signal that causes your arteries to tighten, while lifestyle changes reduce the pressure pushing that signal in the first place. Two different mechanisms, working in the same direction. That's when outcomes begin to look very different. The most researched approach for this is something called the DASH protocol: dietary approaches to stop hypertension. This is not a trend or a short-term diet. It's a structured framework studied for decades, specifically designed to improve cardiovascular health. It works through three primary levers: sodium reduction, potassium increase, and magnesium support. These are not random suggestions. Each one directly influences how your blood vessels behave. Together, they change the internal environment in a way that supports lower pressure and better vascular function. Sodium is the single most powerful variable in this system. Most people are consuming far more than they realize, often between 3,000 and 5,000 milligrams per day. The target for meaningful improvement is closer to 1,500 milligrams, and here's the critical mistake: people focus on the salt they add at the table. That's not where most of it comes from. The majority comes from processed foods, packaged items, restaurant meals, and takeaway. One simple change can have a disproportionate effect: preparing more meals at home. When you control the ingredients, you control the intake. This shift alone can produce noticeable changes within a few weeks. Potassium works in direct opposition to sodium inside your body. Higher potassium intake signals your kidneys to excrete more sodium. Less sodium means less fluid retention, and less fluid means lower pressure on your vessel walls. Many people associate potassium with one or two foods, but the real benefit comes from consistent intake. Throughout the day, leafy greens, beans, yogurt, and other whole foods provide higher amounts than most people expect. The goal is not precise tracking, but consistent inclusion. When this becomes part of your routine, the effect builds naturally over time. Magnesium is often overlooked, but it plays a direct role in relaxing smooth muscle tissue, including the muscles around your arteries. The pathway is different from medication, but the outcome is similar. When magnesium levels are sufficient, those muscles are better able to relax, reducing overall tension in your vascular system. Many people are below optimal levels without realizing it, because deficiency does not produce obvious symptoms. Consistent intake through food or appropriate supplementation can contribute to measurable improvement. When combined with sodium reduction and potassium support, it becomes part of a system that works together rather than everything together. This is where results begin to compound. The medication is working at the level of the calcium channel, physically blocking the signal that causes your arteries to tighten. At the same time, the changes you make in your diet and daily habits begin to reduce the forces pushing those arteries to contract in the first place. Lower sodium reduces fluid retention. Higher potassium helps your body remove excess sodium. Magnesium supports the relaxation of the vessel walls. These are separate mechanisms, but they all move in the same direction. Instead of relying on one pathway, you are influencing multiple systems at once. This is what creates a stronger, more stable outcome. There's an important question here. When your medication was prescribed, did anyone explain this to you? Did anyone walk you through sodium intake, potassium balance, or a structured dietary approach? The answer is no. The focus stays on the prescription, and the rest is left unaddressed. That gap is where long-term problems begin, because without understanding the full picture, it's easy to assume the pill is the entire solution. But once you see how these pieces connect, your approach changes. You stop treating it as a single fix and start seeing it as a system that needs support. Understanding the timeline removes a lot of uncertainty. In the first few days, you may not notice much change. The medication is building to a steady level in your system. By the end of the first week, you should begin to see a shift in your readings. This is also when side effects, if they occur, are most likely to appear. By the second week, your body starts to adjust to the wider arterial state, and those effects often begin to fade. By weeks 3 and 4, if lifestyle changes are also in place, something interesting happens. Your readings not only drop, they become more stable. Morning spikes reduce, and variability throughout the day decreases. Over the next couple of months, this consistency becomes more noticeable. The biggest change isn't just a lower number, it's consistency. When your system is functioning better, the sharp fluctuations begin to smooth out. Instead of unpredictable readings, you start seeing a narrower, more controlled range. This is a sign that the underlying environment is improving, not just the surface measurement. It's the difference between temporary control and real progress. And this is often the point where follow-up appointments look different. Not because something dramatic happened overnight, but because consistent actions began to produce measurable results over time. Here's the most important takeaway. This medication is not the enemy, it's a tool. It creates a foundation by keeping your blood pressure within a safer range. But what you do on top of that foundation determines how strong your results become. Never stop or adjust your medication without medical guidance, even if your numbers look perfect. The reason they look good is because the system is working together. What you can do is create the conditions where that medication works as effectively as possible, for as long as possible, at the lowest necessary level. So the question becomes simple: are you going to rely on the pill alone, or are you going to support the system behind it? If this changed the way you think about your health, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me what's the first change you're going to make starting today.